1965, 3 Israeli agents go behind the Iron Curtain to capture a notorious Nazi war criminal. But 35 years later, the truth comes out that the evil doctor is still alive and admitting to the atrocities he committed against the Jews.
Never forget how young they were.
The 3 agents, long retired and honored as heroes in their country, must now attempt to complete their original mission before the truth comes out that could ruin their lives in The Debt.
We've all just seen it. Brian, you want to talk about it?
I thought this movie was really fantastic, but I have to admit that in the early going I was a little bit concerned because the first, sort of 20 minutes of this movie are really confusing. We're spending time with these characters and they're all kind of dealing with something that's mysterious and we don't know why. And so we really don't have a strong understanding of the subtext. But the second part of the movie really informs us that when the third act comes along, there really aren't any more questions anymore and you're just feeling it.
What I think, though, you're talking about the difference between suspense and suspension. I think it does certain things fine, but one thing for me, the plant in the beginning of the question being asked feels so leaden and so obviously planted in the very beginning that by the time you get to it at the end, there's no suspense anymore. So all it is suspension. You're just counting time until someone tells you what's going on.
I agree, this film requires a lot of patience, and it does pay off. But when it finally pays off, it doesn't explore the themes that I found most interesting, and I found it rather lopsided and uneven.
I feel like the movie is unbalanced in a way. There are too many different narrative threads or narrative styles even to make this movie really coherent. Part of it is this rather well done espionage, the mechanics of being a spy, and then part of it is this flashback melodrama piece, and then part of it is a chamber drama, and it doesn't really come together in the end because it's going blithely off in too many directions, and it doesn't have that balance of tone and content.
Yeah, I thought the tone was really consistent, and I agree that it sort of has these different narrative moments, but I thought that they were weaved together in a really coherent way. And this movie has a structure that's unorthodox and kind of disorienting, but I feel like once we get through the second part of the movie, it really starts to come together, and we really sort of realize that this movie's kind of special.
Would it be different?
We can't go back.
I feel a little torn because I do agree with you and I did enjoy this film, but I found the ending, the resolution, just all too coincidental, all too poetic. I mean, you can tell it's not based or rooted in history because things are happening that are just too unlikely.
On that issue of history, let's go back and talk about its themes, because what this story is ultimately about is atonement, or the impossibility of atonement.
Regret, guilt.
Exactly, right? So there's this secret that all of them have, and they hold on to the secret because it's this idea of the nation of Israel, its fragile psyche needs to heal after the Holocaust. And the reason why they need to extradite this doctor of death is because they want to bring him back, stand him on trial, and it allows the process of healing to go forward. And it hints ever so briefly to this idea that you cannot atone, you cannot paper over these wounds, and yet it never really goes there. It never really delves really deeply into the idea. We just take for granted that this man is evil, and that pushes the plot forward.
I completely agree, and the treatment of the villain, which you alluded to right there, is like, it's a Nazi, done. Development was needed in the script, and it was not given to us.
I thought he was a fantastic character.
I did too. Yeah, I mean, go for it.
I thought he was really nuanced. I thought he brought tension to the second part of the film, which the movie really needed, I think, desperately. And I feel like for characters that in the early part of the film were kind of underdrawn, that we really started to learn about them through that character in 3 very different ways.
I think you're the one that is afraid, David. Afraid of the monster.
Helen Mirren is on the poster, and she's definitely, gets top billing because she's, the star of the movie, but she's really not in it for very much. And the girl who plays the younger version of her,
Jessica Chastain.
Jessica Chastain, is absolutely fantastic.
I love her.
It's her movie.
She's not going to break, David.
They set up the film in the way that the 3 main characters are noble heroes for their country, they're brave, they're strong, and then the event occurs.
Nothing.
What's the matter?
He can understand this.
What?
He just spoke to me.
They become paralyzed and unethical, and as an audience member, I started to dislike them, I started to resent them, and I started to get really frustrated by them. And I think specifically Chastain's character, Rachel Singer, she made really, really poor personal choices
Yeah.
But it didn't make sense to me because she was such a heroic character in the first third of the film.
And she goes from so strong to being so meek in her later life, and it never goes anywhere. And I just didn't buy that fact of her character.
I'm just wondering if we've seen the same movie, because I saw her as a very weak character that had like sort of a emotional immaturity that was then redeemed later in the movie where she became strong. And to me, that was really her story of sort of evolving into a better person.
You're the only one left.
Are you insane?
We can't.
Well, I can't do it. I can't. But look at me. I'm not capable. I haven't been an agent for 30 years. You're insane. No, I can't do it.
It's a good film. I do think it's a good film. I think it's worth watching. And when you watch these characters commit ethical violation after ethical violation, the guilt hits you and the regret hits you. And I think that's a directorial success.
All right, well, why don't we take this thing to a vote?
I thought this film brought up a lot of interesting questions and explored some really substantial themes that warranted a trip to the theater. So, see it.
I thought it was a really well-crafted thriller that really kept you on your toes, so I absolutely say see it.
Narratively, I think it goes off in too many directions, and what I wanted was much more heft. So for that reason, it has to be a stream it.
All right, well, that looks like 2.5 tickets for The Debt, which is a see it. Cheers, guys.
There you go. Cheers. Cheers to heft.